to bring you a quick video. So as you guys know, I'm a big fan of Cardfight Vanguard, and I have been, for many years. So Cardfight Vanguard has been through several iterations at this point. The original Cardfight Vanguard came out about 2011, 2012. The game wasn't as popular in America, unfortunately. But honestly, I thought it was amazing. I thought the mechanics were fresh and cool, and I enjoyed it very much. I picked it up in college, with my first deck being the Dimensional Police Structure deck, Dimensional Robo Dayusha! Which I think I actually have a copy of that in my Pokemon binder. Picked it up from someone who had it just randomly. I actually still play original format. I got a couple of decks in here. I got a Blazing Flare Dragon deck from way back. I have a Blaukluger deck from way back. I've got like a kind of a random bounce back to your hand Oracle Think Tank deck. Vanguard then went into something called the Stride format, which essentially gave Vanguard an extra deck, and the game Stride is still being used today in premium format, but honestly, I felt like that was an attempt to revitalize the game that didn't really go that well. Next, we ended up getting reboots. We got the Vanguard V format reboot, which honestly I absolutely loved. It introduced things called imaginary gifts, like this Force gift I have here, which when riding your Vanguard, you would get a gift. Force, which would give 10,000 power to a Vanguard or Rearguard circle on your turn. Protect gift, which would give you a perfect guard. And Excel gift, which would increase your number of Rearguard positions. I honestly thought this brought the game back to the original feel of Vanguard. I absolutely love it. I have a few decks of this format, and that is the format I'm trying to make a tournament of. We're still trying to get that together. So V format did eventually end, and now our current format is the D format, which is Vanguard Overdress. Honestly, it's going fairly strong, and I actually like where it's going. The anime, I feel like, is not as good as the original anime. In my opinion, the first 3 seasons, original Vanguard, Asia Circuit, and Link Joker are still the best season of Vanguard to ever exist, even though the V anime was pretty good. And Overdress anime is not bad. I do kind of feel like Yu Yu is a recycled version of Aichi, but you know what? He's still not bad, and it can still be a fun anime to watch. So let's talk about what is Overdress, what really made it different. So starting off, Overdress gave us something called the Ride deck, which honestly I think was a great idea. The Ride deck is where you take a grade 0, a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3, and you remove them from the game, from the deck, and during your ride phase, you can discard a card and ride up to the next grade. For example, you start out with your grade 0 there. Your first turn, discard a card, ride your grade 1 from the ride deck. This solves the problem of being grade stuck, which was a huge thing in original Vanguard. So you are essentially guaranteed, as long as you have cards in your hand, to be able to ride up to grade 3, no problem. Another thing that this fixes is, one of the big things of Vanguard is you have a winning image. You decide, how do you want this deck to win? For example, Aichi, he decided, it's going to be going with, this specific card going here. This is going to be my big play here. And then he led into the next one. So we can use the example of, he knew that Majesty Lord Blaster, and building that up would be his winning image at the end of Season 1. For this deck, the idea involves around, using Magnolia to allow your rear guards to attack from the back row. So the winning image with this deck is, I need to make sure all of my rear guards are able to attack, which, is also better accomplished with the grade 4. I do need to fix up this deck. I think I'm going to give you guys a deck profile once I've actually managed to fix it up. But, Winterspell is a poor man. So, yeah, we haven't been able to fix this up yet. So the Ride deck, I believe, was an absolutely amazing thing and I'm really glad that they implemented it because it's a great idea. Next thing that they really put in is order cards. Now, these actually did come out in the V series. They can be kind of used like spell cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! But they really weren't that prevalent. Like, there were some decks that would use a few of them, like the Majesty Lord Blaster deck. But beyond that, really didn't use it. And hello to you too, Kiva. Glad to see you. So order cards became far more prevalent in the Overdress format, even being included in the starter decks. I think you'd get one or two of them in there, maybe three. And there are even whole decks that are based around orders, like Lyrical Monasterio. Several of their decks use order cards, none more than the Laro Nero deck, which is heavily focused on playing your set orders called song cards and then flipping them over to sing them. So order cards became far more prevalent. Now, this is something I'm torn on. One of the things that drew me to Vanguard in the first place was the fact it was a deck of just like 50 monsters, which you got to put on the field and arrange around your Vanguard. I really liked that. It was really different from any other card game I played. At this point, I don't dislike the orders. I think that they're okay. And there's even a couple of decks that I played on Deer Days that heavily focus around them. For example, using the Laro Nero deck, I quite like that deck. It's a lot of fun. But I still find myself moving towards decks that don't heavily rely on orders. And most decks I build, if they do use orders, there's only like 2 or 3 in the deck max. Because I still prefer to focus on the units. So orders, I could take them or leave them. I know for certain decks they're very important, but I also don't really play those decks. Like the Alchemagic deck, I am working on a Dark Knight deck, figuring out how that works, but it's not something I'm huge into. One thing that I do like that Overdress did is the V format introduced the front trigger. When this trigger is revealed, it gives 10,000 power to all of your front row, which was something that was only to Excel clans, because it was made to capitalize on the multiple front row rear guard positions you had. Overdress made front triggers for every nation. So I like that every deck is able to use them now, although to be honest, I do miss stand triggers from the original Vanguard. When stand triggers were revealed, you would untap one of your rear guards. That is another thing that Overdress has done that I'm kind of on the fence about. So in the original Vanguard, let me pull one out. There it is. Grab one of these decks. In the original Vanguard, the big thing was every card had a clan. And these clans, I believe there was 24 of them total. It was either 24 or 26. These clans would determine what cards you can put in your deck and kind of what their power set is. For example, Blazing Flare Dragon here, he's a Kagero. It's from the Dragon Empire nation, so there was still nations back then. They were grouped by nations and then further divided into clans, where the nations gave them kind of an overall theme. Like Dragon Empire would be the pressure decks, putting pressure on your opponent and limiting their resources, while example, Dark Empire would focus on using the soul. Things like that. And then the clans further specified the cards. For example, Kagero is a heavy unit retirement deck within Dragon Empire, while Nubatama focused on binding cards and forcing the opponent to discard them, limiting their hand resources. So still, both of them put pressure on it, but in different ways. So what Overdress did is they got rid of the clans and then only have nations now. The nations of Stoicheia, Dragon Empire, Lyrical Monasterio, Brant Gate, and Keter Sanctuary. Oh, and Dark States. Sorry, Dark States. So that can be a good or bad thing. While I do miss the clans, and I thought that that was a really cool mechanic, and one thing that I didn't like about other games was that things were so spread out and it was hard to really get a good specialization. I appreciated that Vanguard, using the clans, had very clear specializations and it was kind of easier to build decks. Although I would admit, like, I would find a really cool card that I wanted to use, but I couldn't use it in the deck I wanted to use it because it wasn't the right clan. With the doing away of clans and adding in the nations instead, it does allow you a bit more freedom building decks. For example, there is a stealth dragon card, I think it's Tochi Garasu or something. When you discard him during your turn, you can put him in the soul. He is a Dragon Empire card. If this was original Vanguard, he would definitely be a Nubatama or Murakumo card because that's where the stealth dragons were. However, because of the nation system, I can use it in any Dragon Empire deck I want. Which is pretty good, because that's a card I suggest using in any Dragon Empire deck that's going to use any sort of soul blasting. Specifically in Chakrabarthi and Dragonic Overlord decks. Now, what they did do is there are a few cards that still have clans. For example, in set 2, they released Dragonic Overlord, Phantom Blaster Dragon, and I believe that might be where it's either set 2 or set 5 that they released Majesty Lord Blaster. So there's a few cards that say, hey, this still has a clan on it. And for example, one of the decks I absolutely want to build, and I really hope to be able to start building in the next couple months, is Incandescent Lion Blonde Ezel. They've been re-releasing some of the original boss units with their original clans intact, and there's a few things saying, hey, if you have this, for example, the Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion deck now, it says, hey, if you have a Vanguard that's clan is only Narukami, it can do this. So they are bringing some limited clan things back, but still within, the nations itself. So they're still trying to do something like that, which I appreciate because it does give the old fans something they're excited about, and still holds the spirit of Overdress, where they were trying to make the game a bit more resourceful. Now, something else they've introduced, which I actually really like, is the Persona Ride system. It's the new imaginary gift that was put into Overdress. So the way this works is, let's say that Magnolia here is my Vanguard. During my ride phase, I ride another Magnolia. This gives the units in my front row plus 10,000 power for the turn, and I get to draw a card. So Persona Ride can honestly turn around the game and give you the extra boost and extra card needed to really get things done. I appreciate Persona Ride, and there are even cards that, like Magnolia here, that require Persona Riding to be able to fully unleash their abilities. For example, Magnolia's ability here is that at the end of the battle he attacked, I can counterblast, choose a rear guard, and give it 5,000 power, and it can attack from the back row during this turn. If I Persona Road, I can choose 3 instead of 1, which is honestly pretty great. So this requires Persona Riding to fully bring out its abilities. Now, the last thing that Overdress introduced, which is honestly a game changer, is the Over Trigger. There is one trigger for each nation, and there is, there is a generic trigger as well. So what over triggers do is you're only allowed to have one in this deck and one in your deck. This one is the Stoicheia trigger, Source Dragon, Deity of Blessings, Bless Favor. So the nation triggers each have an ability that go with their nation. Trying to think about where I put one of them. Trying to figure out where I put that card. There it is. For example, the Stoicheia one acts as a heal trigger, and you can give all units in your front row 10,000 damage. and choose one of your units, give it a critical. So that does a lot of stuff. But for example, the Dragon Empire trigger, this thing lets you stand up your Vanguard for another attack. So it essentially makes every Vanguard Dragonic Overlord. So these help out with these pretty much they help out with what the clan is supposed to do, or the nation, which I think is pretty cool. By the way, apparently this boy is $25 now. Like, damn. I didn't know that. He was like 2 or 3 when I got him. Whew. Over triggers, as I said, they're a game changer. They're good, but they can also make the game weird. For example, the 100 plus 100 million power, unless you have a perfect guard, you're not stopping this. You're essentially guaranteed an attack. So this can be how you win. It is annoying when you draw it. It does have a 50,000 shield. Unless you draw it through a regular draw, it's removed from the game as soon as it's played. So over triggers, like I said, they can completely change the game, which is interesting and it's cool. And honestly, I like them, but I can also see the arguments where people would say, hey, this is not fair. But the fact that you're only allowed to have 1 in the deck, and you still need the luck of being able to reveal it as a trigger and not draw it, I think that does make it still fair. But games can be decided based on the overtrigger alone. So, in conclusion, I think Overdress was a good idea. I think it added new life to the game, and I personally like it. I'm really enjoying Deer Days. I am playing it with my friend, and we're working on getting our decks built up so we can actually make a Vanguard community in our town. And I'm excited to see where the future of Vanguard goes. No matter how expensive the sets are in Deer Days. There's only 2 I want anyway. Minerva Rising and Clash of Heroes when it comes out, so I can get Incandescent Lion Blonde Ezel and Dragonic Kaiser Vermilion. I'm excited to see that some of my old favorites are coming back. I really want Vanguard to stick this time. I absolutely love the game. It is still my favorite game out of all card games, and I don't want to see it go like Buddy Fight. By the way, I still have 4 decks for Buddy Fight too. I really want this game to succeed, and it's looking pretty strong this time. And I'm really hoping. So that's all I got for you today. I got to get ready for work. Until next time, this has been your Wintry Neighborhood Winter Spell, reminding you guys to stay frosty. I'm going to try to get out some more Vanguard content in the future. Maybe see if I can squeeze in a game with my buddy tomorrow before D&D. And you know what? Let's see how things develop. And I will see you in the next video.